universal love. It's a love that we all stand up and fight back. You got nothing to lose. Stand up and fight back. You got nothing to lose. You got nothing to lose, to lose, to lose, to lose, to lose. You got nothing to lose, to lose, to lose, to lose, to lose. Oneness is a reality, suppressed by evil mentality. Your heart yearns for love and your mind cries for peace and happiness. Stand up and fight back. You got nothing to lose. Stand up and fight back. You got nothing to lose. You got nothing to lose, to lose, to lose, to lose, to lose. You got nothing to lose, to lose, to lose, to lose, to lose. Ever since generations, they've been saying it will change, 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 but it never seems to change. No matter how high the price you pay, they're gonna say you're wrong anyway. People like them are ignorant and stand for how they should the truth. Stand up and fight back. You got nothing to lose. Stand up and fight back. You got nothing to lose. You got nothing to lose, to lose, to lose, to lose, to lose. You got nothing to lose, to lose, to lose, to lose, to lose. No matter what the people say, never run away. For the youth, you're the change, you're the new, you're the one to free yourself. Stand up and fight back. You got nothing to lose. Stand up and fight back. Stand up, fight back, stand up, stand up, stand up.
That's right. Stand up and fight back. You've got nothing to lose. Stand up for your rights. And of course, we're giving you another opportunity right here. You can call any question, anything is on your mind, anything that you're not too sure of. Yes, it's the Good Morning Comrade program right here on the Star. Good morning to each and every one. And the Good Morning Comrade show this morning is hosted by Mr. Luke Browne. Good morning to you.
Well, as the name suggests, I want to start by saying morning, comrade. Good morning, comrades throughout St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It is a great privilege for me to be with you on another occasion, coming to you live from the studios of Star Radio, a studio which was made possible by investment and a studio investment in by the Unity Labour Party, which is important for us being able to deliver our message to you. And of course, a studio which is still standing, notwithstanding the efforts which have been arrayed against it, because we intend to be a voice of the people. We intend to speak up when it is necessary to speak up, and we intend also to, through this platform, through this mechanism, to listen to you and to allow your voice to be heard on the wide range of issues that affect you and the issues that affect St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So I want you to tune in to the program. You join the live today and let us have a nice interactive discussion on subjects which really concern the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I would like to take this opportunity to give special greetings to the comrades from the constituency of East Kingstown and comrades from all constituencies throughout this country. You would know that this program is typically hosted by Dr. the Honorable Ralph Gonsalves, former Prime Minister, leader of the opposition, but he is unable to host it today because he is overseas on travel duty. As I understand it, he is supposed to be visiting Guyana and Barbados before coming back. And on account of the fact that we had a holiday on Monday, Monday was a public holiday. This is the first program that you are having for the week of Morning Comrade. Of course, quite apart from that, our comrade Carlos James was on the record yesterday, and but we are having the first Morning Comrade program for the week, and I'm happy to be your host for this program today. In before he departed St. Vincent to go abroad, the comrade leader himself, he had a special edition program on Friday. So you had 3 installments of the program last week. He wanted to make sure he covered some very important issues before he embarked on his journey abroad. And I think that that was a very, very insightful and instructive program. And I hope that many persons were able to follow it live, and in some cases, as necessary, to listen to it after it was originally aired. He looked at some very pertinent matters of national development and relevant to the government, some very critical matters of public affairs, and maybe we might have the opportunity to cover some of those same issues during the course of this program. We, of course, here on quite a rainy day. We have been having a little bit of a rainy period in St. Vincent, and I don't think that anybody is complaining about that right now, because there was a time a couple of weeks ago when we were in the throes of a water rationing regime that affected some parts of the country. I think that as a result of the change in weather, there has been some relief where that is concerned, some welcome relief certainly here on mainland St. Vincent, and I am quite sure that there is relief as well in the Grenadines, where there was a belated attempt by the government to address the water shortage problem that should have been able to be anticipated by them. But there was no vision, there was no foresight in that matter, and that led to the aggravation of the situation. But as it were, Mother Nature is now granting us the blessings. As I say that, we should also bear in mind that very soon we are going to enter the month of June. So please take all steps necessary. The matter of being prepared for hurricanes and being prepared for the rainy season is not a theoretical exercise at all. It is a very important matter. You might say it is even an existential matter, and we should all be taking preparation very seriously as we inch very close to the commencement of the rainy season, which will start officially on the 1st of June. The 1st of June is just a mere few days away. And remember that as far as our most recent experience with a hurricane was concerned, Hurricane Beryl, it didn't wait till September, October, November to decide to unleash its ferocious power on us. No, it was quite early in the season, if my memory serves me correctly, the 1st of July, when that hurricane developed and basically affected so many lives in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, both on the mainland here and especially in the southernmost part of the Grenadines, which you could say was really the epicenter of that disaster. Fortunately, the ULP administration, before it left office, was able to make considerable progress in terms of helping persons to put back together their lives in the aftermath of that storm. But important is the need for us to keep the message of disaster preparedness forefront in our minds as we move forward. And on having said that, I would just like to address to deal with to mention as a preliminary matter the fact that I was so overjoyed, I would say, at the demonstration of Vincentian excellence that we recently saw in one instance in Barbados and in another instance in Taiwan. And if you looked at the recent, I think, Searchlight newspaper, you would have you would have had the opportunity to look at that. In respect of Barbados, for instance, a Vincentian who is really not from a place that is not very far from here, from Paul Over, a young lady by the name of Gillian Little was awarded or won the award for Nurse of the Year at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Barbados. And I think that she really deserves a round of applause of this nation. She went to Barbados. I think she left here in 2008. And you would remember that was made possible by the Unity Labour Party administration. She went to Barbados. She excelled and she has been excelling at her profession, and that excellence has been acknowledged and recognized in that country. I know it's not a case really of a prophet being without honor, except in her own homeland, prophet or prophetess in this case. But we're just celebrating here the excellence that was demonstrated by our very own Gillian Little. And in Taiwan as well, we have something to celebrate, a Vincentian by the name of Kamali Durant. He was listed among the 2026 awardees of his university. He received an Outstanding Youth Award, and this is an award which was presented for excellence in scholarship, excellence in leadership, excellence in service, and excellence in character. Again, we see two cases of young persons making use of opportunities which were provided by the Unity Labour Party administration to go abroad. In one instance, to go abroad in respect of her profession, and in another instance, to go abroad to pursue further studies, capitalizing on these opportunities and maximizing these opportunities so that they could bring credit and honor to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And I want all Vincentians in general to look at these persons as role models and to demonstrate excellence in their own pursuits. In fact, we have a history of demonstrating excellence all around. And I want us to continue in this vein, especially in light of the fact that there are more and more opportunities these days for the demonstration of excellence by Vincentians all over the world. So grasp these opportunities, capitalize on these opportunities, and let the Vincentian brand go far abroad to and bring credit to our home country. Now, we are in the midst of what I would consider to be a very important period. You know that I mentioned the fact that Monday was a holiday. And Monday wasn't just any ordinary holiday, I would like to say. Well, it was a holiday, first of all, because it was Whit Monday. You know that on our calendar we have many different types of holidays. We have a lot of them being religious-oriented holidays, and Whit Monday is one such holiday. We, not so long ago, had the holidays of Easter, and we had the holidays of, Easter coming into May. We had the 1st of May being Workers' Day. We also had Spiritual Baptist Liberation Day on the 25th of May, and I will say a little bit more about Spiritual Baptist Liberation Day. And of course, Monday, we had Whit Monday. It wasn't only Whit Monday, because we know that in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Whit Monday is also Fisherman's Day. We saw, I think that the top prize for fishing this year went to a resident from Clare Valley. Well, you know, in Clare Valley, fishing is really a way of life. And this gentleman was able to win the top prize of Fisherman of the Year. I understand that this year It is a cash prize. Eli Slater, a very, very well-known surname as well in that community. The top prize went to him, and I'd like to congratulate him on this achievement. And, you know, it has been the point of the government over the years, the point of the Unity Labour Party administration, that you can make a living through fishing. And we provided, in many instances, support and assistance for fishermen and the fishermen and fisherwomen and the fishing industry. Some of that support and assistance is trickling on to the fishermen and fisherwomen even today. The thing is, when they get it today, the administration of this time tries to make it seem as if it was as a result of their action, when in many instances their action had nothing at all to do with it. They were just inheriting something that was already set in motion, that was already set in train by the previous government. So don't allow them to pull wool over your eyes in that respect at all. They want to pull wool over your eyes in many areas. By the way, the Prime Minister said that he was going to have a press briefing yesterday to deal with matters concerning the cost of living. I don't know if he got cold feet. I don't know what was the reason. But when many Vincentians were anticipating announcements that would provide some type of relief in respect of the cost of living, he backtracked, he backpedaled. He said that he would address the nation today, and we are here waiting with bated breath. And I see people coming on the live saying good morning, and I want to say good morning to you, and feel free to express yourself there and make sure that we know that you are present, please, to use a term that has been popularized by Siad Marshall, to make sure that you are present, please. And you could also tell us where you are present from, because that is the miracle of modern technology. You could be present effectively in studio with me even though you're halfway across the world. A miracle indeed of modern technology. So we were supposed to be given some indication on what relief there will be for cost of living, but we are left stranded. We are still left wondering. And I think that it is an indication that the government really is not sure what to do. The government does not know what it is doing, and that is a dangerous place for us to be in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Because as a result of that non-announcement, and we'll see what comes today, and I'm sure there'll be an opportunity to comment on it. As a result of that non-announcement, we have persons who are still wondering whether or not they are going to experience increases in fuel at the pump, whether or not the gas price is going to go up. As a result of the withdrawal of that statement, or as a result of the fact that presentation or those announcements by the Prime Minister were postponed, we still have a situation where we are not sure what will happen to people in relation to their electricity bills. You know, the Comrade had made the point in an earlier program that we might well see in this country, based on the formula, based on the mechanism, the pricing mechanism, we might well see in this country a situation where electricity bills, as far as the fuel surcharge is concerned, go to record levels. And as I mentioned, the electricity bill, I want to make the point that Monday, I said that Monday was a multifaceted type of a holiday. It was a holiday for Whit Monday, which we double as Fisherman's Day. But one thing which almost was allowed to fly below the radar is the fact that it was also the 95th anniversary. You have to turn it down. I'm hearing it. I'm hearing a feedback. One thing that was almost was able to fly under the radar was the fact that it was also the 95th anniversary of the introduction of electricity to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And that was a significant milestone in the journey of our development as a country. As you'd appreciate, 95 years ago, the lights were turned on for the first time. And I don't want us to get to a stage in this country where people feel as if they have to go back to the pre-electricity days in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I don't want it to be a case where the price of electricity is so high that people decide, boy, let me go back to the kerosene lamp. Let me go back to the flambeau. Let me go back to other mechanisms which were used for the purpose of providing light back in those days. So we celebrated the 95th anniversary of electricity in this country, 1931. And that time, as you would imagine, the access to electricity was very limited. I think at the outset there were only about 32 or so customers to what then was what was the predecessor to Vinlec. There were only about 92 customers, 32 rather, customers, all concentrated in Kingston. Of course, it took some time for the access to electricity to be widened and to eventually encompass as it does today as a result of the progressive policies of the Unity Labour Party administration that occupied office from 2001 to 2025. We moved from a situation where there were only 32 electricity customers in 1931 to where we almost have a situation where 30,000 or so houses have almost 100% electrification in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And you know, there were some periods when it seems as if we weren't going to be able to march forward in the way that we should on the question of electricity. There were some dark periods, literally and figuratively. I remember a conversation that the former Prime Minister had in an autobiography of his in relation to the provision of electricity in North Windward, as a case in point. And it is as if he was begrudging the fact that people of North Windward eventually got electricity. You know, and that is really a theme of a lot of what we hear sometimes emanating from the New Democratic Party, because they're not concerned with equity. That is not one of their foundational values, in the same way that it is a foundational value for the Unity Labour Party. And I make that point all the time, because it wasn't just a matter of electricity. Electricity was at one stage a very important consideration, but it was also a matter in more recent times of access to healthcare, because there was a great pushback to the idea, or on the idea, of building the modern medical and diagnostic center. It was in more recent times a matter of access to even secondary education, because do not forget for a second, do not forget for a moment, that before the Unity Labour Party administration took office, there was no secondary school whatsoever in North Windward, as if they weren't supposed to be educated over the river. I want the Minister of Education, instead of getting up in the morning with Ralph on his mind, to think about the fact that without this administration, we would have been nowhere as far as universal access to secondary school education is concerned. We would have been nowhere near where we are right now in relation to the ability of Vincentians to go abroad and study. And I mentioned a Vincentian who's studying all the way in Taiwan. And if the NDP had its way, based on the pronouncements that they made in the past about the relationship with Taiwan, they would have severed the diplomatic relationship with Taiwan. They're tiptoeing on the matter these days because they are locked in to an arrangement whereby a company from Taiwan is currently building the acute referral hospital at Arnoldville, which is not moving at the rate it was moving when the Unity Labour Party was in office, for sure. And we understand that some of that might have to do with issues of payment. They have the money that was negotiated and secured by the ULP administration, but they don't know how to make prompt payments on time. And as a result of that, they're creating a situation where there are delays on that project, and we need this is an indication of incompetence in administration. You know, it would have been all well and good if the people who are affected by this incompetence are only the NDP people. But the truth of the matter is, this incompetence is affecting or will affect all Vincentians who have a vested interest in seeing the completion of that project. And the incompetence is not only really reflected in the way in which they approach that project, it's reflected in their whole modus operandi as far as government is concerned. We have an incompetent government. I mean, when I think about the Minister of Housing, the Minister of Housing, in relation to almost any question which has been put to him, you put to him the question of the continuation of the repair of houses for burial. You put to him the question of addressing issues concerning the relocation of Pole Yard. You put to him almost any single other question touching and concerning housing, and the only thing that he could say to you is that it is under review. He is a minister of review. But you can't have a situation where you review something to death, and while you're doing that, people are suffering. We can't have Rome burning while you are twiddling your fingers. That is not a recipe for optimal development. In fact, that is a recipe for setting back the course of development that we had already embarked upon and that we were so much into already. Remember, we were on course. I heard people trying to talk. I mean, I don't understand if these people, sometimes when some of these people talk, if they actually believe themselves. People trying to talk, for instance, this is something which was said by the Prime Minister in his budget presentation for 2026. This is something which was said by the restless Minister of Education, who probably is imprisoned by a bout of insomnia in his early morning post, talking about the fact that the economy is in the worst shape it has ever been. I mean, people does really take themselves, these people really taking themselves serious? You really seriously trying to convince Vincentians that an economy, which was the second fastest growing economy in Latin America and the Caribbean for the past 5 years, is in the worst shape that it has ever been? You trying to tell us that? You trying, and I mentioned, and I went into an elaboration on this in the last program when I was here earlier this month. How could you be trying to convince Vincentians about that? If you try to tell people that, they will have a problem with your credibility. I mean, for goodness sake, if you want to say something, say that we have made progress, but we could have been so much further along. We mightn't agree with you. In fact, we will definitely not agree with you. Because while we did not have a perfect ULP government, we had a very good ULP government. I mean, tell us when we've made progress. But we could have been further along still. Don't come to people in this enlightened day and age and try to tell us that the economy is in the worst shape it has ever been. You cross 100,000 stayover visitors for the first time. You reach 120,000 stayover visitors in 2025. You're showing a trend of increasing stayover visitors. You're showing economic growth, which is far and above the economic growth that we're seeing in other countries. And you want to tell us that by some stretch of the imagination, the economy is in the worst shape it has ever been? You want to fly in the face of the United Nations and the Human Development Index, which talks about the progress we have made as a country in relation to that index. You want to fly in the face of that and tell us that the economy is in the worst shape? You can't think people in St. Vincent and the Grenadines so stupid. You can't think that we are so stupid. What you need right now, instead of being preoccupied with a government that has been delivering or that has delivered during its period in office. What you need to tell us right now is what you are doing or what you are going to do to improve the position of Vincentians right now in this kind of economy. What are you going to do to ease the squeeze of the cost of living? How are you going to combat the inflation? We accept that some of this inflation comes from abroad. But the government has a role to play to make sure that they insulate the public from the inflation. One of the things, and in consideration of the fact that, as I mentioned, we just celebrated on Monday the 95th anniversary of the introduction of electricity to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. One of the things that, and I made this point and I set out my position very clearly in a recent article. One of the things I believe that we need to consider at this juncture is the question of the fuel surcharge at Vinlec. It was something which was inherited by the Unity Labour Party administration. It is something that is continuing, is still in place today under this new administration. But upon my own reflections on this subject, I think that it is very important. In fact, it is incumbent upon the government to look at the practice of Vinlec with respect to this fuel surcharge and to see if there can be a modification of that practice. Especially in these circumstances. What is really very unnecessary and unreasonable, if you ask me about the question about the fuel surcharge, is the fact that it amounts essentially to a situation where Vinlec is changing the cost of electricity every month. Why is it necessary for Vinlec to change the cost of electricity every month? That is a crazy proposition. Who else does change the cost of the supply of goods and services on a monthly basis? If the price of fuel goes up at the pump, do van drivers have the opportunity to increase their fares? Or if it goes down, do they have the opportunity to reduce their fares? If the price of electricity of fuel at the pump goes up, does a taxi man have the opportunity to increase his fares? Or a taxi woman have the opportunity to increase her fares? No. So, if there are controls as far as prices are concerned, in respect of this, in respect of van drivers, in respect of taxi operators, how much more so is it necessary for us to have controls and a stable pricing system in respect of Vinlec? It is absolutely essential because of the many households that rely on Vinlec for the provision of electricity. And I submit this as an area for possible reform. I don't know if the Prime Minister will address this specific matter in the course of the presentation that he said that he will make. I don't know when he's going to make it now. I don't know if he actually going to ever get around to making it. But the question of Vinlec and the fuel surcharge, I think the time is ripe for us to review that matter so that we could streamline it, regularize it, and so that we don't find, and so that people won't find themselves in a very strange situation. I have to call it strange. Find themselves in the strange situation of possibly being required to pay more for electricity in a month when they use less electricity. So they use less electricity in a particular month compared to a previous month, but for some reason have to pay more for it. That is not a rational electricity pricing model. And, you know, the base rate is something that was set, I think, all the way back in the 1980s. It was set back in the 1980s based on prices, the price of electricity in the 1970s. I think the early 1970s, when the price of electricity or the price of fuel, when the price of fuel was 52 cents per gallon. 52 cents per gallon. You mean to tell me that you can't update the base rate and rationalize and streamline the cost of electricity in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? That will do a wall of good for electricity consumers. You have other utilities. You have CWSA as the water utility in this country. The CWSA just has a flat rate. They just have a flat rate for electricity. How come? For the provision of water. How come CWSA could have a flat rate, and for some reason Finlec is unable to have a flat rate? The thing does not make any logical sense. But of course, we don't see the government. I don't see it as being a situation where the government will place great priority to providing this type of relief, or will place great priority to streamlining the pricing system. If it was something concerning one of their ministers of government and them staying in parliament, or them having the opportunity to stay in parliament, they would have rushed like a thief in the night. They would have rushed in the middle of the night to try to amend the law. No less, to try to amend the constitution so that they could stay on there. Moon run till they catch them, you know. Let it be something that affected one of the members of the NDP government in office right now. And you'll see how quick they find the energy and find the means of modifying and changing the constitution to suit themselves. Of modifying and changing the laws to suit themselves. But matters which are pertinent to the day-to-day life of Vincentians, they dragging the foot on that. There are government locked in a perpetual cycle of review. Review this. Review that. Review the other. Make no progress. Bring the country and the economy to a screeching halt. I'm wondering, and I would like to see the earliest opportunity, what the figures are as far as economic growth in this country are concerned. What the figures for the economic growth in this country would be for 2026. The actual figures. What will be the actual figures for economic growth in this country for 2027? Because the government has not done anything at all that is supposed to foster or stimulate economic growth or increase the prospects of economic growth for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We had been doing that. We had many policies. We made many interventions that were favorable to economic growth. We made interventions, for instance, that brought sandals to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. You hear them bad talking that. You hear them bad mouthing that. You hear them running down sandals. It's almost as if they are on a course of trying to be scaremongers to the detriment of our economy. I mean, what is this government doing to increase or improve our competitiveness in tourism that it did not inherit from the previous administration? My good partner, Jomo Thomas, he took it upon himself to make some utterly ridiculous comments. I mean, if you're presenting yourself as some kind of a public commentator, you have to recognize, and he would be very familiar with this type of language as a lawyer, you have to recognize that you have a duty of care in relation to your listeners. You cannot make negligent statements. You cannot make statements in a reckless manner without any regard for the truth. And you cannot, after making those reckless statements, seek to double down on them when the truth about the matter is actually revealed. That is most disappointing. I mean, when Sandals came here, I was coming here initially, instead of celebrating the fact that we were able to break a deadlock, we were able to move past the limitations of the previous investor in Buckermet Bay. When Sanders was coming here, instead of celebrating the fact, you're going and talking about how the government giving away the land to Sanders free of cost. Your lie was laid bare. It was laid bare. I think in relation to that earlier land, it was something about almost 800 $1,000 per square foot. Well, the similar price for both the land at Bookament and the land at Mountwin. But the fact that you were wrong was laid bare. Accept the wrong. And the only thing that could prevent you from really accepting the fact that you were wrong, is if it's a case where you were wrong for spite. You wanted to drive a certain impression into the heads of the Vincentian public, and as long as you achieved your objective of driving that impression into the heads of the Vincentian public, you couldn't care less if you were wrong or right. Exactly. Don't frustrate the development of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, please. Don't frustrate the development, a development that has the potential of bringing, and the Prime Minister made this point, Prime Minister Gonzalez, who is the leader of the opposition at this moment. He made the point that the investment by Sandals in beaches was earmarked to be of the order of $500 million US. Emphasizing the fact that this investment was an investment which was bigger than the investment in the Argyle International Airport. It was bigger than the investment in the port in Kingston, and you want to badmouth that, and you want to get Sandals to put that genie back in the bottle? You want to make sure that we don't have a situation where up to 2,000 Vincentians could find employment in the resort? And this is not even talking about persons who will be employed as a result of the existence of the resort here. Talk to transportation service providers. Talk to persons who are into small businesses which are patronized by these hotels. Talk to individuals who are farmers. Talk to persons who supply products of one kind or the other. And you will see that there is a great industry around the developments in tourism, and we need to encourage it. I was hoping quite intently that not only would we have, you want to put back on this thing? Not only would we have Sandals in Bookament, I was hoping that we would have beaches as well come on board. I was also hoping that we would have Marriott come on board, because if we were able to complete out that continuum, it would have meant that we had something catering for everyone. No matter your walk of life as a tourist, whether or not you come for a budget getaway, whether or not you come in for a honeymoon, whether or not you come in for a business activity, whether or not you come in for participation in a sports competition. And that is something that we need to pay attention to. And incidentally, it's not just a matter of the hotels in terms of a build out for the accommodation of guests, because we have to put some emphasis on Airbnb type structures, because they could be very lucrative, especially in a situation where you have reasons for persons to come for competitions. I know, for instance, that some of my nephews went to Barbados over the past long weekend, and they were involved in a swimming competition over there. And in the area of the swimming pool, as I understand it, there were many Airbnb apartments, and they were all full. So that is definitely an opportunity for investment which is available, or which was available in Barbados, and which I would say is available to Vincentians as well, as we build out our tourism in this country. And we are building out our tourism, and I tell you about this administration. In the last program when I was here, I made the point that they're talking about how they have 4 pillars for the economy. They're talking about agriculture and tourism as being the pillars for the economy, and they do not do anything in the further and in respect of citizenship by investment, which they want to use to attract foreign direct investment. They are not planning to use citizenship by investment money for anything related to agriculture or tourism. So these people really are clueless, and they expect Vincentians to be just as clueless about as them when we are examining the nature of their policies. But that is not how we are going to approach it at all. And incidentally, I suppose that shortly after this announcement by the Prime Minister, if there should ever be an announcement at all concerning the cost of living, he might come back to the public to tell us what they are doing about citizenship by investment. And I plan one of these days, to talk about citizenship by investment at length. You've heard so much about it, and so. But the point I want to make here about it is just simply the fact that they said that they were going to introduce citizenship by investment by June this year. Now we are in the month of May, and May has 31 days. We are at the 27th, so we just have the 28th, the 29th, the 30th, and the 31st to go. So June is on our doorsteps. So if we are going to have the commencement of this initiative in June, where is the legislation to facilitate citizenship by investment? Where is the policy statement in relation to citizenship by investment? How are Vincentians to receive their directions about the information about the direction of this government on this matter? Let us get directions from the government on this matter, and let us get some further directions from the government on what they are planning to do in relation to the National Development Bank that they're talking about. They're talking about persisting with the National Development Bank over and above the objections of the IMF, and notwithstanding the fact that there are other alternatives which are available to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, including working through the central bank, the commercial banks which exist here, including working through the credit unions, and including making sure or looking into working with the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank for the expansion of the Eastern Caribbean Partial Credit Guarantee Initiative. I read an article recently where the central bank governor was saying that the banks need to lend more, and the banks definitely need to lend more. And they don't only need to lend for the purpose of financing housing projects, as important as that is. And they probably need to give better terms to people in respect of housing projects, but they need to lend as well for financing small businesses, small and medium-sized enterprises in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And they have even more reason to do that because of the Eastern Caribbean Partial Credit Guarantee Program. I think that the governor of the Central Bank was making the point that about 300 loans were approved on the basis of that program. But when the government is talking here, when the government of this day is talking in St. Vincent and the Grenadines about the Eastern Caribbean Partial Credit, about the National Development Bank, I wanted them to tell us specifically how much money you're going to put into the capitalization of that development bank. You're talking about you're persisting with it. Well, give us the details so that we could be guided accordingly. Give us the details so that we could be able to tell whether or not this is a gimmick or this is something serious that is actually going to materialize in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Because based on all that we could tell by this government, this is a government of gimmickry. You dangle a gimmick before the public in the lead up to the election. Say you're going to reduce VAT from 16% to 13%. And you dishonest, disingenuous ministers of government going on radio and talking about how there was never such a commitment. A main central manifesto undertaken by you could be so denounced by a minister of government. I mean, the thing worse than Peter, who denied Christ 3 times before the cock crow. The cock ain't even crow good. The cock ain't even done crow good. But you jump on radio and you deny it once. They say, no, look at this here. But you deny it again. And they said, no, look at this report from online. And they deny it again. The man was St. Peter in relation to the denial of Christ. You're denying your own policy pronouncements made during the campaign. But I'm telling you, that is a part and parcel of a trend of dishonesty. But you distance yourself from your central pillar. You're talking about that for years. It's not now you're talking about that. You're talking about reducing VAT for years. You're talking about reducing VAT since the last election. But now you're in office, you ain't reducing nothing. And you're trying to distance yourself from it. So when we confronting this question about your intention to develop or to set up a national development bank, I wanted to give us some specifics, man. Give us some specifics to work with. Tell us how much money you're going to capitalize it with. I saw a report recently coming out of Guyana. The Guyanese set up a national development bank. They capitalized it with $200 million US. The question for the NDP government is, are you going to capitalize the National Development Bank with something of that order? Are you going to put it on a sustainable footing? Or are you going to treat it in the same way that a previous NDP administration treated this whole issue of setting up a National Development Bank? Don't continue with the whole set of gimmicks in relation to matters which are really pertinent. I would like the government to take initiatives that would allow the access, that would ease the access to capital for small business holders. And I would like to be able to have confidence that they're actually going to do something that makes a material difference. I'd also like the government to adopt a posture which facilitates investment and encourages investment and recognizes the importance of investment. I would like the government to demonstrate or to indicate or to show that it has a progressive foreign policy. That is another matter for a different discussion. And on the matter of investment, you go and you talk about this remittances thing, and I think the Prime Minister Gonzalez, now leader of the opposition, he dealt with that effectively during the course of his program last time. That you can't try to compete with remittances. You can't try to compete with the current recipients of remittances by saying that people who send remittances should convert that into investment in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. These are people who are really serious about anything. You want them to not send money back to their relatives to help them to afford the cost of living. And you want them to convert that instead to investment? Come on, man. Come up with a strategy. Come up with a sensible strategy to attract investment in St. Vincent and the Grenadines that does not seek to compete with remittances. I mean, the matter of remittances already having so much competition, because I hear some people in the Republican setup in the United States of America talking about how they want to reduce the extent of, they want to tax rather remittances, which would reduce the extent of the actual cash in hand that people in St. Vincent and the Grenadines get and people elsewhere get. I mean, we can't, let me not compete with that. Let us come up with sensible policies for the development and for investment. And definitely, how does somebody who has a philosophical disagreement with investment with foreign direct investment and investment in this country, how do they reconcile that philosophical position with a position of support for citizenship by investment, where you basically remove any real, genuine connection between a citizen? You remove the need, I should say. You remove the need for a genuine connection between a citizen and their country. You're removing that need. You're making the passport a commodity to be sold instead of a sacred document. And we saw it just the other day. I don't know if I have the information at hand here, because this is something very relevant. We have a situation And I was able to pull this here up. If you paid attention to the newspapers recently, you'll have seen about the ranking of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines passport. We have to first of all start out by noting the fact that in 2006, this is during the life of the Unity Labour Party administration, on the passport index, the Henley Passport Index, we were ranked 38 in the world. So we were ranked 38. You see, on almost every important index, St. Vincent and the Grenadines has been moving in the right direction. I already spoke about how we were moving in the right direction in terms of economic growth. I already spoke about how we were moving in the right direction in terms of the Human Development Index. And in relation to the ranking of our passport, we were also moving in the right direction. We were ranked 38 in the world in 2006. And by the time 2026 came around, we are now ranked 19th globally. From 38 20 years ago to 19th today, and we were able to get into that position because of the types of policies that the Unity Labour Party administration adopted in relation to passports. These are policies that persons are trying actively and very aggressively to undo in this day and age, and we cannot allow them to get away from it. It's one thing for them to have a mandate to govern, and then they have to we allow them to govern, but they have to govern according to law. And a mandate doesn't give you the right to do anything you feel like. A mandate doesn't give you the right to do anything you see fit. You still have to abide by the rules and the laws of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and you still have to be guided by principles of fairness and principles of reasonableness. And anytime we see the government deviating from these principles of fairness and the principles of reasonableness, you could put your pot on the fire and pay attention to the fact that we are going to bring you back to the place where you need to be. We are going to keep you honest. We are going to work always to protect the best interests of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And don't think for a moment, well, I know that many of them saw the last convention. I mean, some of them, they stay home. Even though they stay home, they're making sure they watch all the pictures, all the videos coming out of Russell's auditorium. They thought that the thing was going to be empty. They thought that our convention was going to be a flop. When they realized that that was not the case, they came to an important awakening that labor is alive and well in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. That labor is not dead, labor is alive, and the comrades are ready to rally with its government. And this party is a party that's going to make sure that we do what is right by the people. We'll keep the government honest, we will keep the government accountable, and we will make sure that we always look out for the best interests of the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And with those few points, I want to open up the lines now in this second hour of the program to give you an opportunity to call in. I still have some things that I would say in between calls, and I'm sure during calls as well. But I want to give you the opportunity to call in and to let your voice be heard. I want you to speak up and to express your views on the state of play with government, give your suggestions and ideas so that we could make sure that we minimize the damage that this NDP administration could do to our dear and beautiful country. Whatever subject you might want to cover, you are free to cover that subject. Bearing in mind the backdrop which was set in the last hour or so. Now, as we wait for the calls, and let me remind you of the number to call. The number to call 451 7827 451 7827 or 534 7827. I think the 534 7827 number is a number that that you could get to on WhatsApp. So you could call either of those numbers to make sure that you get into the program and let your voice be heard today. So to repeat those numbers, 451 7827 or 534 7827. So the lines are open for your calls at this time. Now, I wanted to say a few more things about the Spiritual Baptist Liberation Day while we wait for calls and so on, because I want us to really have a full appreciation for the significance of this day and the role that the Unity Labour Party and Labour by extension played in the liberation of spiritual Baptists. I think that there's an indication that there is a call on the line. Hello, good morning. Morning, comrade.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to the program.
I think St. Vincent is going to be suffering from what I consider that the small paychecks. You know, those weekly paychecks that people get every Friday, that they could go and shop and spend. Once you close down construction in a large way, that kills the life of the country.
Yes,
because the guy who normally will get a paycheck every Friday, and he could go out and, let me say, have a drink or buy food for the family. When you don't have that regular paycheck every Friday, you start stinging on the money now.
Yes.
You don't want to go out and do what you would have done every Friday.
You are correct.
Your habits have changed. Everything changes. So I think that's why people say that St. Vincent, the economy is slow, very dead.
Yes.
Because the flow of money that comes from construction is not happening.
No way.
And once that is not happening, everything's going to slow down. Because if I know I'm not going to get a paycheck Friday and I have a little $100 in my pocket, I have to figure out how I'm going to hold that $100 in order for me to eat this week and probably next week, and you know what I mean?
Yes.
So I think that's one under ULP. There was so much construction was going on that the country was bright. People were moving about. People were doing things because then next Friday they're gonna get a paycheck.
Yes.
You know.
Yep.
I mean, sad to say, some of us is not very good savers.
Sure.
We are very good in spending, but not very good in saving. So a lot of people would have got their money and just went and spent it.
Well, true, but the truth is too that based on the amount of money you earning, there's not really much left to save after you're paying for bills. You pay your rent, you pay your electricity, you pay for groceries and so on. There's really very little scope for saving for some persons in particular income groups. So I mean, of course, we encourage the habit of saving, but we encourage it with a realistic point of view that sometimes you based on your level of income, you might have to spend most of it in taking care of your expenses.
And that's what I'm saying. That's once you cut back, once the country doesn't have that turnover of capital on a weekly basis, it will make the country look stagnant. It will make the country look stagnant because, I mean, you can't expect me to go out and spend like how I used to spend when I knew I was going to get a paycheck every Friday.
And the truth is that explains to a significant degree a part of the problem with what is happening concerning the Beaches project, which was supposed to be at Mount Twin. If you're building a 500-room hotel, and you're going to build it in two phases, as I understand it. The first phase for 350 rooms. The next phase for 150 rooms. You could imagine how many persons would have been employed on that project. That project would have been a lifesaver along the Leeward corridor. What are you going to replace that with? Are you going to replace it with a state of stagnation in this part of our country and throughout St. Vincent and the Grenadines in general? That seems to be what the government intends to do right now.
And Browne, as much as we want to say we should have our nationals do the investment, truth and fact, that monk when placed in the under the first NDP, and they never seek to develop it under no local investment.
What
And
we,
everybody's making noise about local investors, but I mean, how many people locally will want to invest the kind of money Sanders was trying to invest?
right. I mean, the capacity to engage in that level of investment, I think, is very limited as far as a local investor is concerned. I mean, the truth is we put policies in place that would allow local investors to be able to invest in St. Vincent and the Grenadines as well. And not only to invest, but to invest in such a way that they build up their capacity. And maybe in the future they have the opportunity to capitalize on some large scale investment projects. But as it stands now, who is better as a regional entity? And we have to take into consideration the fact that we must have a CARICOM outlook. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is not going to have everything that it needs for itself. This was the basis of the establishment of the CARICOM. This was the basis of the establishment of the University of the West Indies. This is the reason why we have West Indies cricket being a regional institution. The simple fact is that a small country must be a part of a larger entity in order to take care of itself. If we do not have, we will have particular types of expertise that we could export to other countries. And we have done that in many areas. And equally, we could bring in to St. Vincent expertise from within the region that would help us to achieve our developmental objectives. So this is somebody from within the region. You can't fight down an investor from in the region and you're ready to sell passports to somebody from somebody in a distant part of the world who don't know anything about St. Vincent and the Grenadines on the basis that you want investment? What kind of thing is that?
It's the same thing I was arguing with a guy the other day because he told me he prefer to sell the passport than to sell the land. And I said to him, I said, let me tell you something. When you just said, if I sell a man a passport, I sell him land too. He said, how? I said, well, he become a Vincent. He's entitled to buy land.
Exactly. And the thing is too, some of the CBI programs actually provide the passport in exchange for investment directly in land.
Yeah.
So land is at the center of it all.
Yeah, you can't tell me that you're selling me a Vincent passport and tell me I can't come buy land if I want to buy land. I could make sure that because my Vincent passport, I don't have to pay for the what do they call it?
The alien land holding license.
I don't have to pay for that.
Exactly. You don't have to pay for that, and therefore the government will lose track on actually what is the real position in terms of ownership of land in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I mean, these people don't have a rationally consistent position at all.
That's why I tell people, I say sometimes you say things and you don't really realize how far-reaching is that. Because selling a passport is not just simply selling. Because if you sell me a passport and I choose to come to live in St. Vincent, you can't stop me now.
Exactly.
I'm a Vincentian. I could do what I want.
Exactly.
I have the same rights as a Vincentian.
Utterly reckless policy. Utterly reckless policy. They want citizenship to be based on economic contribution rather than having a genuine connection to a country. Nonsense, man.
Yeah.
Nonsense.
Yeah, so that's my point of this morning.
Thank you, man.
Talk to you later.
Thank you. Great contribution to the discussion. We definitely have to be vigilant against the arguments that some people are trying to bring.
Okay, there's a WhatsApp message, text. And the person wants to know, while you were Minister of Health, former Minister of Health, they were beating up on you left, right, and center, complaining about no drugs at the hospital, the polyclinics and the various district clinics, and especially the Milton Cato Memorial Hospital. What are your thoughts, on what is going on, especially knowing that the Cuban doctors, who have really contributed, in saving lives here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, knowing that, we've heard 5 of them already gone back to Cuba.
Oh, Well, what I saw recently a statement by the ambassador of the Republic of Cuba in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who is a very decent man, a very warm man, and his heart must be broken over what is taking place in his country right now. In fact, as we are on that subject, let me also add my voice to the chorus of persons denouncing the recent indictment of Raul Castro, former president of Cuba, over a matter with respect to which Cuba has already issued a complete defense. And this is really something which is a matter of playing to the politics of certain parts of the electorate in the United States of America. I mean, you try to indict a man overseas just to try to see if you could bolster your own political position in your country, especially when you are wheeling as a result of the fallout concerning the Iraq war, and you impose a complete and total energy blockade against Cuba so that they cannot access the basic necessities of life. It is wicked. It is cruel. But what the ambassador of Cuba to St. Vincent and the Grenadines was saying is that there is no intention of winding down the cooperation program between the Republic of Cuba, the noble and decent and upstanding Republic of Cuba, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And I want to take the ambassador at his word in that respect. I know so many Vincentians have, and not only, and the truth of the matter is, you want to talk about winding down the presence of Cubans here. Well, you also want to wind down the presence of Vincentians who were trained in Cuba to be doctors?
Wow.
You understand?
Yeah.
They are just butting up on policy. You know, they're moving in such a haphazard direction as far as policy is concerned. And I would not like at all to see the day in St. Vincent and the Grenadines when we weaken or reduce the relationship or the strength of the relationship that we have with the Republic of Cuba. And the truth is, as in terms of the period when I was Minister of Health, I remain very proud of the record of achievement that we had during my tenure as Minister of Health, including achievements that concern making sure that medicines are more available to the public through mechanisms such as OECS PPS. We made several agreements that redounded to the advantage of Vincentians as far as access to medicines are concerned. And we made many other significant strides in healthcare, including the stride of opening the modern medical and diagnostic center, which has been an important edifice of universal access to healthcare in this country, a structure that helped to extend the lives of countless Vincentians, and just as one case in point, that provides dialysis services which would cost millions of dollars annually to patients free of cost. Don't get me started on our record in healthcare. I mean, I know that things aren't ever going to be perfect, but certainly as far as progress in healthcare is concerned, and as far as the matter of universal access to healthcare is concerned, I think we excelled. And you know, recently I saw an announcement about the CT scan, resumption of CT scan services. And I think it's very important for the hospital to pay attention to the need for patients or potential patients to be able to access this very important diagnostic service. When I was there, one of the important achievements that we made is the fact that we introduced 24-hour availability of CT scan services, just to make sure that we have all accommodations in place to provide the most efficient possible healthcare service to the public. So these are just a couple of points. These are just a couple of points that we could make in relation to my tenure as Minister of Health. And just to close it off by saying that I very much wish, as I said before, that we would have an ongoing relationship with Cubans. And we thank Cuba for all that they have done for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Of course, St. Vincent and the Grenadines stands firmly and resolutely with Cuba at all times as required. We thank the Republic of Cuba for all that they have done for us, including training Vincentian doctors, and I would know very well the impact of that training of Vincentian doctors, which has served to strengthen our healthcare system. And the areas in which we must strengthen the healthcare system even further, if I were to provide advice to the government on the matter of health, I would say that we need to focus considerable attention to the matter of prevention in relation to healthcare. I think that we need to focus on prevention in relation to crime, and I'll say more about that at a different forum in due course, and we need to focus on prevention in relation to healthcare as well. Diets, physical activity. We need to do that. We have another call on the line.
Morning.
Hi, morning. Welcome to the program, Morning Comrade.
Yeah, good morning. I'm glad you touched on the point because I call and make a statement. I want to know what happened to the Minister of Health, because did not hear him saying nothing. When you was there, he was opposing you so much.
Man.
Now he didn't drive seat, and that's him. I say, but he think I do something.
Well, he got quiet. When I was there, and I tell you, when I go Parliament all the time, I used to make sure keep my eye on him because I ain't want he throw no stone after me. Cause if he could attack the house of the Lord and that way, boy, who am I? I remember the man going ballistic on a whole set of other things, Now the man like he tamed like a lamb. One of the first things he do when he get inside there, say, well, actually, we have an adequate network of healthcare facilities to serve the population of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The man gone full circle, you know.
Imagine cold like ice, because what you mentioned in America presently right now, any private doctor you go in, they inviting you to take a CT scan. Sometimes you say, I've been treated, so I could tell you, he said, I give you $200 to pass the CP in the CT scan. And they go there and check you from top to bottom. So, what are you talking about there? You know, the Labour Party was on a good track.
Mm-hmm.
But the majority of people in this business didn't understand. You understand the Minister of Health and how things going. So when they put Mr. Cummins there, I say he never studied doctor, which I already saying. But you want to just be a doctor field. Nowadays, you're quiet like a lamb. What's going on?
Yeah.
Now they're fighting against Leacock. Right, brother? You're doing a better thing. They're fighting against Leacock. And Leacock know the game, you know. Leacock know the time July coming up. So anytime Bramble and the other thing, he will be the Prime Minister.
Well, the truth,
I gone.
he would wish to be the Prime Minister, but the truth is, a lot of what you're seeing happening here right now is coming from the internal wranglings of the NDP, because they are mortally afraid of what could happen at the court, and they want to basically preempt the matter by tackling Leacock now, so that if there is a development that they don't like down the road, it is not automatic that Leacock go and sit down in the office. That is what they're doing, and don't be misled by them people calculating. They want to knock him off his high ass early. Why watching them? We have a call? Okay. Yeah, they want to knock him off his high ass early because they saying, boy, we're not sure about the prospects with this thing. But if something happen, it's not Leacock we're going to put up there, boy. And in any case, Leacock ain't helping himself because there's a whole set of nonsense he talking. He talking about wanting to put police in the schools. Well, the economics of that decision was knocked out of the park by the Comrade at National Council. And not only the economics of the position was knocked out of the park, the sense of the position was knocked out. Well, it didn't have any sense to knock out in the first place.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Welcome to... Well, sorry, morning, like you're gone ahead of us there, boy. Where you calling from, England?
Good afternoon, Comrade Browne.
Hey.
Morning in your case.
Morning, Comrade.
You know, I am so happy that you're on. I listened to you the other day, and I'm happy you're back.
It's good to be
And
back.
the thing is, right, there's a travel advisory the UK government has issued for St. Vincent.
Yes, I heard about it.
And it's a long list of things. But I am now, because I have a lot of friends up here, and they see my Facebook page, and they see what is happening down there. I am now being questioned if St. Vincent is a safe place to go.
Jeez. Watch where we reach.
Right?
Watch where we
So
reach.
it is damaging our reputation.
Yeah.
I tell them St. Vincent is still safe.
Yes.
I tell them, because I go back home every year and I bring home 2 or 3 different persons from England with me to see St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And we're coming back in September again this year.
Yeah, we have to come home.
But we have to somehow, I don't know what we could do to help them, because helping them helps us. Keeps St. Vincent reputation where it is, or try to improve it.
But people does have to want people does have to want the help, no? You could take a donkey to water, but the donkey had to want to drink the water. And,
yes.
And we help them by presenting alternatives to policy, in terms of policy to them, pointing out the areas where we think that they might be making mistakes, but they mightn't take it. And the best way to help, well, not to help them, is by taking them out of office. That's the best help we could give them.
Yeah, but they can't even take constructive criticism.
No, not them.
Not them. And a person who don't listen, you cannot learn from your mistakes or the past mistakes of other people.
That is correct. But they're not interested in.
They want to do this was no matter what.
They do not. They did not embark on the quest of securing power for the purpose of solving the problems of the country. Because in the first place, they do not have the capacity to solve the problems of the country. When we are deciding on the people who should lead our country, we have to pay attention to the attributes of these people. We have to look at their knowledge. We have to look at their...
That is all I hear. A salad of words. Nothing concrete. Nothing that you can put your finger on and say, okay, this is going to happen.
Yes.
Because every time they say something is going to happen, exactly the opposite happens. Nothing.
There we go. That's the state of affairs.
All I could say is that I know the party still have a lot of support out there. St. Vincent still have a lot of support out here in the diaspora.
Yes.
And we can only do our best to help them, help us, help St. Vincent move forward. And you guys just continue plowing along and doing what you're doing, pointing out the mistakes, bringing it to their attention, and try and get them to change their minds somehow or the other. There's not much more we can do.
And trying to get them to occupy office for a shorter time as possible. that is ultimately what we need to do to salvage the situation in this country. Yeah, I mean, we just heard the information about the travel advisory for St. Vincent and the Grenadines that was put out by the UK, and I'm surprised that we would find ourselves in this position, because Minister Leacock said that he has the answer for crime, and all that has to happen is that he needs to get into office, and once he gets into office, St. Vincent would become a crime-free paradise. But when he actually begins to face the music, he recognizes that his idea was far-fetched, and there is a lot of work that has to be done to basically uproot some of the deep-seated issues that present security challenges for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But having said all of that, we definitely want to encourage Vincentians to continue coming to our country. We encourage visitors to continue coming to our country, because St. Vincent is open and is prepared to welcome you with open arms and to make sure that you have some memorable experiences. We had a recent influencer in the country, Aisho Speed. Many people know him, and he had a memorable experience, and he didn't even experience the full measure of Vincentian hospitality and experience the entirety of the Vincentian tourism product. Is an excellent product that we have here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and we want to share it with the world. Come to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And as far as the work of the opposition is concerned, we will continue to make sure that we present ideas for policies and for interventions that are in the interest of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And, hopefully they don't always fall on deaf ears. And we are also prepared to work with the government for the best interest of the country. This is the approach and this is the posture that we have to take if we really want St. Vincent and the Grenadines to do well. And we want this country for sure to do well. So remember, if you want to call, the lines are still open. You can call 451-7827 and 534-7827 if you want to get in on the program. I was making reference earlier to the fact that we not only celebrating we didn't only celebrate Whit Monday and Fisherman's Day on Monday. I had commented extensively on the fact that Monday was a really power-packed day. That's what I would call it. A power-packed day. We had Whit Monday. We had Fisherman's Day. We had the 95th anniversary of the introduction of electricity. And then also on Monday, we had African Liberation Day. A very important day on the calendar. I want all Vincentians to pay attention to it. I want us to keep in mind that the cause of African liberation is very relevant to the state of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Very, very important. I want us to keep in mind of one particular fact on this matter. You remember that Walter Rodney, he wrote a book, one of my favorite authors and historians. He wrote a book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. And many years later, Hilary Beckles, who I think would have described himself as a protege of Walter Rodney, wrote a book on how Britain underdeveloped the Caribbean. So that shows a common connection between Africa and the Caribbean. We were, first of all, St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the Caribbean is a part of the African diaspora. A significant percentage of our population is of African descent or has African heritage. So we connected in that way. I remember that some time ago, a president of Ghana visited this country. I think it was someone who's probably traveling to Ghana soon. I don't know if it was the Comrade who was saying that he was going to go to Ghana at some point in the near future, but it could be. But in this case, it was a president of Ghana coming to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And on that trip, he said something very profound, which I will always remember. He was making the point that the fortunes and the fate of Africa is bound up with the fortune and the fate of the Caribbean, because persons outside of Africa are judged by what goes on. Black persons outside of Africa are judged by what goes on in Africa. And if Africa does well, they also do well. I thought that those were very important words coming from the former president of Ghana. I want everyone to keep that in mind. And I say this in the context of making the point that the cause of African liberation is relevant to the liberation of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Have a caller? Okay, we have a caller on the line. Good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Comrade. How are y'all doing?
Yeah, we're good, man. Just having some fun in studio. And happy to hear from you.
Yes, keep up the good work, man. Keep up Up the good work.
Thank
People could
you.
never did.
No, not
All
at
I think they want to do is to go in there, eat down the house that hold on. You know they can't do the work. We know they can't do the work,
It
man.
is true. It is true.
I'm calling all with from Barbados.
Man, I could hear it in the
So that's
accent.
fine. You have a blessed day.
You take me back to
That's
my.
what they wanted to go in to do. Eat down the house, brother, bro. Eat down the house.
Yeah, we can
That's
allow.
all they wanted to go in there and do. Eat out the tell you like Quran, and then they say they find this part and that part. But we will bounce back again.
We will. By
Yeah,
God's
bye-bye.
grace. All right.
You all have a great day.
Thank you. A very important reminder from that caller that we will bounce back again, that we are going to, I believe very firmly that in the next elections, the country is going to bring back labor. They're going to bring back labor with a force and a vengeance so that we could course correct, that we could take St. Vincent and the Grenadines back in the direction that we should be going. I was making the point about African Liberation Day, which was on Monday, and saying that the cause of Africa is relevant to the cause of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the fact that this is reflected in a number of ways. We also should keep in mind the fact that there was a certain African king, King Jaja, who lived in St. Vincent and the Grenadines for a period of time. And that takes our mind back to a lot of the problems associated with the period of slavery and colonialism. King Jaja was sent into exile from his kingdom in Africa and brought here to St. Vincent and the Grenadines because he stood in the way of the imperial interests. And he was captured through a veil of deception. And when we reflect on this, we have to make sure that we concentrate our minds on continuing or furthering the interest or the matter of liberation. And I would like to connect the question of liberation to the question of the spiritual Baptist, because it was African Liberation Day on Monday, and we had Spiritual Baptist Liberation Day on the previous Thursday. So it is a period of liberation. I think some persons were hoping that they could have had a holiday on Friday as well, so that they would have been so that they would have been home from Thursday. They would have been home from Thursday until Tuesday. That would have been a dream come true for some persons. That would have been liberation or freedom in a meaningful sense of the word for them. But one of the things we don't want to really ever liberate ourselves from is work. You know, we want to also make the point that hard work is very relevant to achievement, and hard work should be celebrated and rewarded. Very importantly, so we had the African liberation connected to the which is connected and very relevant to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. You know, one of the things as would come out from the formulations I used of Walter Rodney, how Europe underdeveloped Africa, and Hilary Beckles, how Britain underdeveloped the Caribbean. One of I would say that the two important questions for liberation, African liberation in this day and age, have to do with the matter of the eradication of racism and the quest for development. And the quest for development is necessarily connected with the issue of reparations. And we definitely want to see progress on that matter of reparations during our time. We want the government and the regional activists to work concertedly to make sure that we are able to have the righting of the historic wrongs. You take people from their home country, you bring them here, and you put them in slavery here. You work them without paying them, and don't expect that a reckoning will come, a day of reckoning will come, a day on which you would have to pay compensation to their relatives and descendants. So I believe that the cause of reparation is a cause that has to be won, and it has to be won on the basis of our conviction of its clear importance as a matter of setting the historical record right. So we had that, and as it turns out, as a matter of real significant coincidence, we have a situation where we were celebrating African liberation on the same day of the anniversary of the death of George Floyd. You might remember that episode in the United States of America where an African American was killed by a police officer who had his knee on his neck for a prolonged period of time, and the way in which that sparked the Black Lives Matter movement throughout the world, a very important movement, a movement that moved mountains. You know, the Americans have this propensity to actually act in this way from time to time, because I see the Black Lives Matter movement in the United States as being a continuation of the Black Power movement from the 1960s that was important in the fight for civil rights in the United States of America. And that movement did its work, and the work continued in this more recent day and age through the Black Lives Matter movement that was very beneficial as far as the fight for equality in the United States of America is concerned. So that was the type of day we had on Monday. Significant for so many reasons. Incidentally, in the upcoming few days, we are going to celebrate the anniversary of the birth, another anniversary of the birth of the founding father of the St. Vincent Labour Party, which was a precursor, the predecessor of the Unity Labour Party. On the 3rd of June, we will be celebrating the anniversary of the birth of Robert the Right, excellent Robert Milton Cato, the first Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And before he was the first Prime Minister, he was also the first Premier of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, because he took us into statehood in 1969. In 1979, he took us into independence. So he is our first Premier and our first Prime Minister. And he served for a period of time as the Chief Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So we are going to, he was born, I think it was in 1915. So between 1915 and 2026, we will have the 111th anniversary of his birth on the 3rd of June. And we could talk for days on the enduring legacy of Robert Milton Cato, and I plan to do a paper precisely on that enduring legacy, and I hope that the time might even come when we have a school of government which is dedicated to his memory, a school of government that in fact covers matters of politics as well, as we celebrate the founding father of our independence, the Right Honorable Milton Cato. And I know that some persons may have had experiences with him, and perhaps during this, I mean, I don't know if there's not much time left for calls now. It's now we're winding down to the closure at 12 today. But if there's anyone who might want to call in anticipation of this upcoming celebration to provide or to share a memory of this great man, we will be happy to have you call in now. But I make that point as I prepare to talk about the spiritual Baptist. I wanted to leave the final word as far as this program is concerned for the spiritual Baptist in this country, because I think that this is the very definition of a group of people who went from persecution to elevation. I was, as a young man growing up a young boy growing up, I had a lot of curiosity about the Baptists and the faith. There's a very well-known Baptist church not too far from where I live. We call it the Free Church. We call it Free Church, just loosely speaking, but it was the church, and that is because the Free brothers, the twin brothers, Carlton Free and Carlisle Free, they presided over that church for an extended period of time. I had a lot of curiosity related to the close proximity of this church to our house, and the use of flags and so on at special times also engendered a lot of curiosity and piqued my interest from time to time. And then as I became older and I had an appreciation of the significance of the religion, I did a lot of research on the community in our country and the way in which they underwent a period of persecution. To the point where I think that it is fit for us to say that essentially they went from they went through persecution until they got to their point of elevation. And Milton Cato played an important role in their elevation. But before we get to that point, we have to go back to 1912 to get a sense of this story. I think that there's even a suggestion that the spiritual Baptist faith originated in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. In 1912, there was an attempt to outlaw them. And I want to make this point by reference to a post which I put on Facebook on Spiritual Baptist Liberation Day. And I want to share this post with the listeners to the program here now, if it will come up on the phone. Post from Spiritual Baptist Liberation Day. I made this post 6 days ago now. In 1912, the right of spiritual Baptists to practice their faith in this country was outlawed by the Shakers Prohibition Ordinance, which was Ordinance number 13 of 1912. Just by way of the history, I want to make the point that they didn't call themselves Shakers. They were called Shakers by the persons who were the enemies of their religion. In the early days, as I understand it, they used to call themselves the Wilderness people. And sometimes I wonder if this is connected to the fact of John the Baptist, if this is connected in any way to John the Baptist in the Bible, because, John the Baptist was a man who was preaching in the wilderness back in those days. So maybe there's a connection, but they call themselves the Wilderness people. And the reason, one of the reasons why I was exploring the possibility that there could be this connection is the common reference to the word Baptist eventually. But their practice of their religion was outlawed in 1912. And that was just, so the outlawing, as a result of it being outlawed, we had a situation where, I continue the reading of the post, where spiritual Baptists were harassed, arrested, dragged before the courts, imprisoned, fined, beaten, tortured, stigmatized, criminalized, and subjected to many other forms of terrible treatment. So they were treated in horrible ways because of their religion. This religion which was outlawed. But I go on to say here, nonetheless, this persecution and oppression did not break their spirit. They steadfastly resisted the imposition of ridiculous restrictions on their freedom of religion and persisted in their faith. And, in the Beatitudes in the Bible, in Matthew chapter 5, if you look at the passage from verse 10 to verse 12, there's a reference to this type of thing. It says, for instance, in verse 10, "Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake." And an example of a people or a group of persons that was persecuted for righteousness' sake is the spiritual Baptist. But if we look at the scriptures, we would see that they are given the instruction that they are blessed, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. It goes on at verse 11, because in the Beatitudes, I realized that there was a special emphasis on the matter of persecution. There's talk about blessed are the meek. There's a talk about blessed are they that mourn. But persecution runs all the way from verse 10 to verse 12, and I think that is instructive as far as the message of the scriptures is concerned. It went on at verse 11 to say, "Blessed are you when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake." And I think that verse really applies to our Baptist brothers and sisters, the number of false things which were said against them. And then in verse 12, the point is brought home: "Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so persecuted the prophets which were before you." And I was reading a passage in James recently, James chapter 1, which I think relates to this. It was almost giving me the feeling of Beatitudes in James chapter 1, which it talks about being tempted. And when you are tempted, it should work patience. It should help you to perfect your faith. And then those who persist in their faith through temptation will attain the crown of life. In the case of the spiritual Baptists, they attain the crown of a national holiday being dedicated to their memory. And there was what I would call 4 stages of their elevation from that state of persecution. And very importantly, the first phase of that was inaugurated by Milton Cato, exactly 75 years before the recent anniversary, the recent celebration of Spiritual Baptist Day. Because in 75 years ago, Milton Cato, and I'm going back to the post here now as we come to a conclusion. We're in the last 5 minutes of the program, and I want to thank our listeners who have been here with us for the duration of this program. Exactly 75 years ago, Milton Cato, in his capacity as a lawyer, won an important court ruling for the liberation of spiritual Baptists. So that was the first stage of their elevation, a court ruling that essentially took the teeth out of the legislation and prevented it from being able to be used against the Baptist community in the same type of a way. First stage. After that stage, we had a stage in 1965, which is captured here. Subsequently, the Prohibition Ordinance was repealed in 1965. So that was the second stage. You have a case, you have an outcome in a case which basically restricted the prosecution or the potential for prosecution. You had a second stage where you actually had the repeal of the ordinance itself. We had a third stage in 2002 when the 21st of May was designated to be Spiritual Baptist Official Recognition and Freedom to Worship Day. So we see another stage in their elevation from persecution. From persecution to elevation. Remember, they are blessed because they were persecuted for righteousness' sake. For the sake of their interest and their desire to practice their religion. And later on, and this was done in 2024 by an act of parliament, later on, that same date, meaning the 21st of May, was proclaimed to be a public holiday entitled National Spiritual Baptist Liberation Day. And of course, this holiday came into effect last year. I ended that post by saying that this is not just an important holiday for spiritual Baptists, but this is an important holiday for anyone who believes in religious freedom and that people in this country should be able to practice their religion as they see fit. And I was happy to be able to put those words together for our good and faithful members of the Baptist community as I sought to express solidarity with them and their movement and the question in relation to the question of liberation. And I don't want us, especially in this period, to take that word liberation lightly. We had Spiritual Baptist Liberation Day recently. We had African Liberation Day on Monday, connected with all the other issues that go with it. Do not take the word liberation lightly. Liberation is a very important word. And you get a sense of its importance if you go back to the motto of the French Revolution. Liberty, equality, fraternity. That was the motto of the French Revolution. Liberty was also a very important part of the motivation for the architects of the American Revolution. In the American Revolution, the authors of the American Constitution said that their aim and objective was to secure the blessing of liberty for themselves and their posterity. That was central to their interests and desires. And this is also reflected in the pledge of the United States of America, which describes itself in that statement as being a country of liberty for all. I don't know the extent to which that is really true, given the contemporary reality. But liberty was at the heart of it. In that same country, you have the Statue of Liberty, the iconic Statue of Liberty, to tell you the kind of premium which was placed on that word. And you also have the Liberty Bell. But it's not only in France and in the USA that there is this emphasis on liberty and liberation. I want to bring it right back home, because the first group or grouping which became known as a political party in St. Vincent and the Grenadines was called the 8th Army of Liberation. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we also had ULIMO, which was the Yulu United Liberation Movement. Liberation again. Very important. Very central to our whole thinking and to the whole process of what is required by us. I want us to think and to spend this time. This is my closing injunction. I want us to spend some time thinking about how we could go about liberating ourselves even further, advancing the cause of national liberation. Not just the matter of African liberation. We're talking about national liberation now. And anytime I talk about national liberation, I go back to a definition of it, which was provided by former president of Guyana, Cheddi Jagan. And Cheddi Jagan said that national liberation has 3 components: political independence, economic emancipation, and social justice. The Unity Labour Party has always been on a course to bring about an increase in the state or degree of national liberation in this country. Unfortunately, this matter is being set back by the current administration in office, and we have to do our best to change course and to get back on track so that we could experience greater and greater freedom. Freedom from an economic standpoint, freedom from a social justice standpoint, and freedom even in terms of the consolidation and extension of our political independence in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This is why we have the Unity Labour Party. This is why we are a going concern. This is why we are still alive and well. This is why we are doing the business of the people of our country, and we remain committed to continuing on this course for the foreseeable future in the interest of advancing so that we could advance the interests of the people of this beautiful country which we love. Thanks again for listening, for being a part of this program today, to the callers who contributed and allowed their voice to be heard. You helped to make this a special experience for me, and also I'm sure for many other persons. Take care. I look forward to being back on Morning Comrade with you in the near future.
look at my necklaces now. I have one that would be perfect for you. Miss, hey miss. Fine. All are coming to People Island to look and ain't want buy nothing now. Cheap self.
Excuse me, miss. You know what you just did? That was the wrong way to get the tourist attention to buy your product.
Wrong way, sir? I ain't studying wrong or right.